You made it, you BEA, beautiful souls. Welcome back to another Darktide video, and there is quite a ginormous update that will probably bring players back. What is Darktide? Well, Darktide's supposed to be a relaxing game, but I think some people honestly forget that it's supposed to be super chill. Will it bring players back? That's a good looking question, Timmy. The answer is maybe. Will the game still be a gambling fest? Not so much anymore, if I do say so myself. However, there is more grinding, so players that actually have played at least 500 or 1,000 hours and invest in so much time in this game, they probably still don't have enough plasteel, although I know some people who have 25 million ducats. Darktide is no longer that meme of continually digging through the mines and maybe you'll find the highest ranked weapon at the shop while having the best stats, 80 on literally everything. Now you can essentially do whatever you want with whatever weapons that you like to goon off to, because there's a lot of great weapons in this game, and if you're a returning player or a new player, I think you'll find plenty of things to do in this new update. Since we've all been playing Space Marines 2 and absolutely staying in our goon cave to the Space Marines and gooning off to the female Tyranids, you sick son of a... I think we're gonna have a good time coming back to the first person shooter or first person horde clear, because as fun as third person gaming is for the Space Marines and great to use all the parry counters and killing all those Tyranids, ripping them in half, it's always nice to go back to Darktide, which has a really good foundation of just horde clearing cinema. Space Marines 2 definitely is peak, but the content still is a bit lacking, at least compared to Darktide. But Darktide has at least a year up its belt. However, Space Marine still needs time to linger and cook, whereas Darktide at the launch was pretty messy. There's a reason why Space Marines 2 is a Giga Chad game, because they have amazing developers that focus more so on the story, the lore, the gameplay aspects, instead of just some cash shop, like those greedy Swedish Fat Shark developers. But goddamn, does Fat Shark actually cook with these skins? The artists are absolutely top tier. Makes me want to spend all my money on this game. And I know some of you guys have decided to get Aquilas instead of your new Warhammer figurines. Tough choice, but I'm sure you are all willing to sacrifice just to get that satisfying drip. I, however, am still enjoying the loads of build variety in this game, and there's plenty of new builds, nodes that have been adjusted for you guys to explore on their psyker, weapons, etc., all that good stuff. There's a lot to take in, but I'm gonna go over this video and just showcase you my journey on what I've been doing in Darktide lately, because I have been playing it like a crap ton, I kid you not. Even more than For Honor recently, and you guys know For Honor is my favorite cock and ball torture game. There's nothing more that I love more than Main Menu Simulator, 1v7 gaming, and the broke company Ubislop that is losing all of their shares on the stock market. So when I booted up this game, I was pretty intrigued because I haven't really seen too many videos on this itemization, because I wanted to kind of go in blind, didn't really want to spoil myself, and when I went into it, I was like, wow, this is actually crazy. If you guys didn't play Darktide before this itemization patch, you essentially were playing Gamulating Simulator. I was gambling pretty much all my plasteel away, and it's a very rare currency. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I had an amazing time gambling away all my plasteel. That high you get when you get the perfect tier 4 blessing setup, it was just the best thing in the entire universe, honestly. Like, I kid you not. I had some time to spare to play Darktide, and I did play it religiously for quite some time, and I still do, honestly. It's one of my favorite games next to For Honor. But Darktide just had that itch where I could just gamble away all my savings, and maybe if I hit the jackpot, I might be happy and not have crippling depression or have my anxiety control my life forever. Anyways, that is besides the point. I like to feed my addiction. I know some of you guys don't. Most of us aren't, we're not born with a silver spoon or silver plasteel fed to our mouth, and we have to look around every single cranny, every single butt crack on those heretics and look for plasteel, okay? I don't care if I'm going into that Nurgle's mouth, I'm gonna get more plasteel for my teammates and myself. And so all my curios had 10% auto dockets, and that really helped out. 30% on finishing a mission, I'd say that was totally worth it, and maybe worth my insanity. I mean, most people who are going into the hives probably lost their insanity already, and I'd say that is totally well worth it because we are able to gamble away our life savings. I'm such a broke boy that I'm always at 100k to 0 every single time, because you have to get at least a 360 power. But right now at this current time with the itemization, you don't have to gamble away your plasteel anymore. You don't have to gamble away all your money. All you do is buy one weapon and level it up. I'll explain it, as it can be quite difficult to understand when you first boot up as someone unfortunately with brain rot, especially even as a veteran and a new player. I'm sure it's going to be difficult, but once you kind of understand what the gist is, I think it's fairly straightforward, just a little bit different compared to the previous Darktide. And I think it's kind of weird, but I feel like the previous one was a great way to keep players from actually just continuously grinding. It felt like a gacha game. I kid you not, it felt like a gacha game. And I think that was their plan all along. Fat Shark, you sneaky bastards. And so the biggest thing to say about this patch is that now you won't have to gamble away all your life savings. You can actually keep your plasteel. And I've noticed that a lot of players aren't really even looking for plasteel anymore when they're going through the orc missions. Even in Maelstrom, nobody's even doing it. I guess in Maelstrom it makes sense when it comes to orc, because what you want to do is you play that game mode for the difficulty aspect. If you want to play and get a bunch of plasteel, you just play like orc level 5 damnation runs, because there's a lot more chill, way more chill compared to like Orc Maelstrom with tons of specials, hordes, and running around at you and just coming at your face. Now obviously they adjusted quite a few weapons. You know, they gave us the ability to use the dueling swords on the veteran and zealots. You can do some pretty crazy builds, and I do want to talk about that later for sure. They also buffed the Thunderhammer, a few things with the Psyker, new nodes, and all that good stuff, but I want to talk about that a little bit after when I go over the itemization. So I'm just going to go over the new masteries really quickly. It's going to be a bit confusing for people who are coming in after taking a break from the game, or just new players in general, but I'll try to go over as quickly as possible and as simply as possible. So essentially every single weapon has been pretty much just lumped together in one form. You know, you have your variants and whatnot, MK2, MK3, doesn't really matter. Now it's all just going to be like combined, and you can choose which one you essentially want to use depending on what playstyle you have. So all you have to do is click on the weapon, and then you go to marks up here, and you can choose whichever one you want. And remember, these ones, each weapon has a different heavy attack, different chain attacks and inputs, and so depending on what you want to use, you just go ahead and choose that. They're not separated anymore unless you have a different weapon or a different saber. That's essentially what it is. Pretty simple, straightforward. Now the masteries, if you have like older weapons already that were already maxed out beforehand, this doesn't matter too much to you, because you've already essentially maxed them out and got them at the highest tiers. But if you bought an older weapon or a new weapon, it's going to start off on the lowest 300 points. And essentially, you're going to have to play this weapon and level it up like crazy. When you have like a combat knife, I only have a 300 power combat knife, right? And I have to choose the blessings on what you want to pick. Now, these blessings, they are not going towards your weapon. You can't just pick all of these and have them on your weapon. You only get 2 perks and 2 blessings. What these allow you to do is that the more you play a certain weapon, especially if you haven't played that said weapon, you will earn blessing points, and you can pick which ones you want to get to the tier 4, so you don't have to use all your plasteel to switch them back and forth every single time and farm and grind and gamble away your plasteel to hopefully maybe get a tier 4 blessing that you want. So all you have to do is keep playing the weapon and then get your blessing points and level it up, and you can essentially just keep on continuing to switch blessings whenever you want. It's fairly simple and it's pretty easy. I feel like this should have been the first iteration, but Fat Shark do be doing Fat Shark. This is a huge time saver in my opinion when it comes to actually finding the tier 4 blessings, because if you didn't know previously, what you had to do was you had to gamble every single weapon that you had to buy it from the shop and then level it up with tons of plasteel and hope that you find that tier 4 blessing that you had. Now if you had it beforehand, if you already found it beforehand, you could easily just swap it with plasteel to a different weapon, blah blah blah. But if you never had that tier 4 in the first place, then it's pretty grindy and you are gambling. Well, with this new setup, you don't have to gamble anymore. All you have to do is play it, and then you unlock tier 4 blessings for your weapons of that variant, that is. So as you can see here, I'm simply just choosing all of these because these are the ones that I want. Lacerate, freaking Flesh Terror, and of course Uncanny Strike. So we're gonna level these up as much as possible. So as you can see here, I have tier 3 Uncanny Strike. That means when I go to the store, go to my knife here, where's my knife? I can go to my knife, and re-bless them with the tier 3s that I currently unlocked. And since I don't have the tier 3s for the other ones yet and still have to get them all the way up to 1, 2, 3, the tier 3 blessings, that means I have to grind a little bit more and get those points. And I don't have my tier 4 unlocked, as you can see here, unless your weapon was already currently maxed out. When you compare it to my Blaze 4 sword, which is already 490 points, I can go over here and see that I have my tier 4 blessings already because this weapon is already so freaking high. So one thing that's confusing for probably a lot of people, if they haven't watched like a bunch of freaking tutorials online, is the empower thing. So the empower means that you can essentially upgrade your weapons. All of this bar right here, all of this dark yellow, that is what you can level up by spending plasteel and your money. So they made the game a little bit grindy in that aspect. There is something to grind for now, but you also have to spend plasteel and your hard-earned money to do so. You don't have to do it for your highest ranked weapons that you played before this update, but there is still a little bit of power that you can give it to reach its max potential. See, I still have to play the knife a lot more, and it was one of my most played weapons actually, and it still requires a higher mastery level, so I have to be grinding that. They did make it a little bit more grindy, but it's not that big of a deal because I do play it quite a bit and I do love this game. However, they are adding more to it, and the more we can grind, the more we can continue to keep playing the game. And so this is going to be pretty annoying for some players, but for other players, they're probably going to like it. As you can see here, I'm going to be leveling this up, increasing the damage ever so slightly, trying to get it to a higher damage output. I can keep going here, and eventually it's gonna keep going. But this is like very expensive, very expensive. Look at this, it's 100. I mean, it's 50 plasteel. Actually, no, it's 100 plasteel. Overall, I do think this is a better system. It does kind of feel like an FU to the players who had played this so much beforehand, but the good thing is that if you're actually trying to build a new weapon for any new players or veteran players, most of the weapons are already getting very high stats already. Beforehand, you would absolutely get the worst stats for your weapons. You had to get at least, or buy at least, a rating weapon of 360, 350 for the weapon to actually have good damage values. So you have like the chance of getting, you always want like damage to be at least like 75 or 80%. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day because the damage multipliers and the breakpoints aren't going to necessarily matter too much, but you always want to go for like the highest number possible. And usually you can get about 4 stats that are really high, and then the 5th stat is going to be, you know, a little bit lower. But the higher the rating, the better usually. But with all these weapons we have currently, I'd say about almost every single, like at least 4 of them are going to be like 80 that you can get to. Like 80 attack, 80 power level, and then the 5th one is going to be a little bit lower, maybe 60, maybe 70. And I think that's a good balance, honestly, because there's a lot of times you would get really low weapon rating, that's 300, and the stats would just be horrible. So you're saving money, and you're honestly saving plasteel at the end of the day. Let me know what you guys think of the new system in the comments. I honestly cannot tell you how many hours I slaved away trying to farm the perfect gear. I wanted to commit Sudoku because there were so many times, like, you have to have the mod where it buys a certain amount of weapon and it automatically sells it for you, because the UI in this game was absolutely atrocious. I don't know who the developer was that created the UI, and they didn't implement a system to automatically sell certain items below a rarity. Like 350 and below are usually pretty trash because of the four of the stats are going to be high, and then one stat is absolutely abysmal. It's going to be like 10%. Horrible. Nobody wants that, and it's just a bad deal. And so they didn't even give you the option to multiply select every single weapon that you want to get rid of. You had to do it one by one, and it was just the most agonizing thing ever. And so I know the pain. You guys have been there. I know you all have been there. It's a horrible experience for you all, but now it's all over with and we can just move forward. There's no more pain anymore, besides the random teammates that keep pressing W even though there's a horde behind us and a ton of specialists coming from behind and in front of us. So when I first found out that they actually added a bunch of new weapons onto, not new weapons, but like the weapons that we have currently, and swapped it and gave it to like the other classes in the game, I was pleasantly surprised, except for our poor Ogie boy who just gets to use his big weapons. Hopefully he'll get more weapons in the future, especially the ranged weapons. I feel like they're a bit lack. lacking for him, but he does get a really nice pickaxe, of course. But we are now able to get shotguns for the Psyker, the dueling sword for the other two classes, Veteran and Zealot, so that's pretty cool in my opinion. You can do some cool builds now with those classes, and that's one of the main weapons that I really wanted to build after I was done streaming. Zealot now with the dueling sword is able to one-shot crushers, which is freaking amazing. It's probably the most satisfying thing ever. Now, did he need this? Obviously not, because he already had a bunch of other weapons with certain capabilities of one-shotting crushers anyways with the Thunder Hammer, but having this and having more builds with a little bit more variability with speed and all that good stuff with the dueling sword is a welcome change. Are they going to nerf this? I hope not. There's plenty of other broken things in the game. The more broken things we have, just as long as it's not, you know, absolutely destroying other people's experiences, should be fine, because when you're playing Maelstrom mode or even Auric modes, there's at least 4 crushers everywhere coming up from behind you. And so I'm going to go Flak, Maniac. You can also go Unyielding as well and replace Flak, because the Maniacs will be pretty good in general, and the Unyielding will work for the big Ogrins and bosses to deal more damage, but it's up to you. I'm already one-shotting these guys from behind anyway, so if you want a little bit more damage output, that's totally up to your builds. The Ross is probably your most important build. Deals more damage the longer you hold your heavy attacks. Uncanny Strike when you hit the weak spot, the head or the back. The blessings on your Curios, it doesn't matter too much, but I always try to run as much combat ability regeneration as possible. You could run it for your wounds here. I like having 1 wound just in case. Doesn't really matter. If you feel like it's important enough where you take enough corruption damage and then you can get 1 more revive instead of just having no revives, then that's up to you. Personally, I like running 1 wound just in case, especially if you're solo queuing yourself. And so having toughness, HP is really important. Going onto the talent tree, just make sure you stay on the right side as much as possible, because the right side 20% damage on melee backstab hits. And I always go opt out for Until Death and Holy Revenant. This allows me to be a god essentially and get my health back after taking critical damage. And then going towards Shroud Field, this is Perfectionist. You're going to get a lot more damage when you hit them in the back. Really powerful, and that allows you to one-shot them. Even without this specific Shroud, you can literally go over here and get your 5-second increase to stay in the fight longer, or stay out of the fight longer and reposition. But even without it, you're going to 2-shot the Crushers anyways. If you want to have fun one-shotting, then that's up to you. And you're going to go Blazing Piety to get more critical chance. You could go opt out for the Inexorable Judgment to get more damage when you're walking or running, and then hit the enemy afterwards, which is something that you could do. You can move faster as well, but that's totally up to you. Personally, I like having a little bit more crit chance and just using this because it's more of my comfort pick. And so that's how I'm getting the one-shot. Plenty of other ways to do it too, so it really depends on how you want to play the game. And you guys know me, I always run the shotgun with pretty much all my builds. I am building one for my Psyker right now, but for the Psyker itself, there are quite a few new fun builds that you can do with them, and it's pretty silly. I've seen a flame staff where essentially they just press primary fire the entire time, and it does do more damage than the previous iteration. You just have to get that node that does 30% more damage on your left click, and it's pretty insane. And you guys know that I use the walls a lot. It really helps in Maelstrom missions, especially the Auric ones where there are a ton of specials coming at you. The dogs, the mutants, all of them, and you can stop them in their tracks. A lot of players don't play around this, and you definitely should. It really helps give you space and a breathing room when it comes to a huge horde coming at you, so that's really important. And I'm having a lot of fun with Psyker, especially with the new nodes that have been added. Psyker hasn't changed too much, but it's just a nice quality of life because you actually get a little bit more build variety when it comes to using your staff or close range weaponry with the new shotgun added to your arsenal. So for the Psykers, of course, you have to redo all your builds again. I had 10 builds and I had to start back from 4, and it took me forever to get my build set up again. There's a few new nodes for you to mess around with and essentially rebuild your entire Psyker class. This one, I'm gonna go for a Smite build, and this is a new move right here. Charge Strike. Your heavy melee attacks electrocute enemies, damaging them. Enemies electrocuted by you take 10% increased base damage from all sources. I feel like this could be pretty helpful if you're going for a little bit of melee. This will also go well in conjunction with the Thunder Maul or the Thunder Mace that has been added last patch, and that's a fantastic weapon. It's just a great versatile weapon to use against pretty much everything. Heavy units, crowd control, all the above, you name it, and it does electrocute. It also has a blessing that gives you more damage when they're electrocuted, so this would really go well with Psyker. They moved the nodes around. Essentially, they're still pretty much the same, but there is like new stuff for you to mess around with. 30% damage to Force Staff's primary attacks after fully charged Force staff secondary attack lasts 5 seconds. I mean, if you want to use your primary attack, you get 30% more damage. That's up to you. And this one is also pretty much the same thing. You just get a bunch more damage with your primary attack. This one also is going to be new, unlucky for some. When an ally in coherency gets knocked down, replenish 100% toughness to all other allies in coherency. So that's pretty good. There's also another one as well. For this one is for players that go down a lot. Overloading through perils of the warp no longer knocks you down, but you're going to take corruption damage now. So Crystalline Will is going to be pretty cool for people who accidentally don't look at their peril that much. So I know a few people who this is going to be really beneficial for. Another one that they added was Surety of Arms, 25% reload speed while below 75% peril. This one is very helpful. I tried it on my shotgun and it is majestic. Really helps you reload a lot quicker depending on if you're just going to be using guns for Psyker, and I use that all the time myself. So I found this very helpful if you're going for a gun melee build. As you can see here on the right side of things, lightning speed, this is going to be more of like your melee centric style of combat. It's going to be your gun psyker, melee psyker, and I love running those builds. So lightning speed, 10% melee attack speed, very helpful. By the crack of bone, melee weak spot kills, quell 5% peril, reduce further peril generation by 20% for 4 seconds, and then of course 100% cleave based on peril. So that's pretty freaking cool. Killing an enemy with soul blades restores 5% toughness and grants 5% critical hit chance for 5 seconds. So that's pretty sick if you ask me, but I'd say if you are pretty smart with your placement, you should get more value than using the dome, as the dome doesn't really do anything besides give you a bit of toughness regeneration and of course toughness damage reduction. And with this rework with Psyker, you actually have more varied builds when it comes to your gun Psyker slash melee Psyker. You can still use your staffs and whatnot, but you have a little bit more freedom when it comes to building a class. Each class, Zealot, Veteran, and Ogryn, both have their specific ways of creating different builds, and now Psyker even has a plethora of it. So I like this. Keep doing this matchup because I like being able to choose my build ever so slightly and changing it up when I feel bored with the current build that I'm using. If there's any other crazy builds that you guys have found for me, please let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to try them out actually, because I think Skier's Gaze is mostly unchanged if I am correct, but let me know if you guys found out anything different. So of course when I hopped onto the game, I wanted to try out the new event or the new map, and it's basically running around and pressing W as fast as possible. This is totally a different change from the usual game modes that we have. The usual games last 30 to an hour sometimes, especially if you're playing on the highest difficulty, because there are constantly waves coming at you and you kind of want to push forward but not too far forward, otherwise you're going to get hit from behind and in front all the time, because there's a lot of spawns in this game at the highest levels. If you're not killing them fast enough or not clearing them, not any crowd control, you're kind of cooked. So you have to play in a pretty team coordinated setting, and especially with this new map, you have to be really quick. I think you only get about 10 minutes before the game is over. So there's a timer in this mode, and personally, I think it's fun for people who want to speedrun all the time, but I like taking my time and enjoying and looting and finding plasteel, exploring the map and all that good stuff, whereas this mode is you're going as fast as you can. There have been people that have just fallen off the map or fallen off the train. There are plenty of times where I've done that myself, but if you want to speedrun this is your go-to. I think in pubs, it's a little bit hard to do right now because a lot of people don't understand that there's a time limit, so give it maybe a month or so for players to realize how to play this, and it won't be as difficult in my opinion. But right now it's a little bit hard to do in pubs and matchmaking because a lot of players are just pressing W and just getting killed because there's not that much places to hide. You do get to hide in like a train cart and close the door off, but they also have plenty of high ground situations and long distance firepower to rain on you, so you have to be careful. Have an Ogryn for damage reduction, Veteran for more shields, and of course I think Psyker is pretty important in this mode to have a dome shield, or at least have the square shield to block the specials and give you guys a little bit of cover, because you don't really have that much of a wiggle room. You kind of just have to keep pressing forward and don't leave your teammates behind because they will get caught out in the open by themselves. So you have to be quick, you have to defend against all the specials when you're trying to get your teammates to do the puzzle in the event. So it can be a little bit frustrating, and then of course you have to fight a boss at the end. It's a little bit just everything coming at you really quickly. So I think if they improved upon this, maybe they made the time limit a little bit longer, 15-20 minutes, it would be a little bit more enjoyable, because I do like the atmosphere. Fighting on a train, always fun. It reminds you of Space Marines too, where you're sending this where you're sending the train to blow up all the Tyranids. it. So I think that's a really cool aspect. It reminds me of it, but I don't think that's necessarily what's happening in this moment in time. It's just that I've been playing so much Space Marine, and that's what it gives me the feeling of. You guys will have to let me know if you've been liking it, because I've been clicking quick play, and I am getting those maps a lot. Personally, I've just been manually choosing my modes that I want to play, because I don't want to play that mode as much. It's really short. I like the longer games, the more drawn out stuff with more specials coming at you. It's just a little bit more enjoyable experience and immersive, if you ask me. Have your team comps been good? Have you just been having the worst randoms? That is probably what's happening to most people. Still, I think it's an interesting take on the genre, and hopefully they improve upon it, and I'm really excited for the Endless mode. I haven't been able to play it. I thought it was on the 26th, and it's already been a day past, so I don't know where the Endless mode is, but you guys have to let me know what's going on there, because I would just like to fend off against thousands of enemies while you just hold a place, hold a base, or anything of that matter. And now, after playing so much after this update, I've realized that there's tons of weapons that they added. The heavy sword was even included for the Psyker. You get the bolt pistol, a bunch of other weapons for every single class, of course, except for my boy Ogren. There's just so much freedom when it comes to being able to choose a weapon or a kit that you want to run with in pubs or with your homies. I honestly cannot wait to try out the Psyker Flame Staff, where you're just throwing the left click the entire time. It's just balls of fire. I'm pretty sure it's a better flamethrower, and I heard that flamethrower got some buffs too. So I'm just really stoked to play around with all the new weapons. So right now it's got about 12,000 players, and I've been pretty much watching the entire Steam statistics for how players are enjoying the game so far, and it's about 10 to 12,000 players, and that's a pretty solid number given that they usually have on average 3 to 5k players, and it feels like a snail's pace when it comes to the updates. But the game at the fundamental core is still really good, and I feel like the performance, God, guys, I tell you what, the performance is insane. I'm getting insane frames, so I'm really happy about it. The bolter pistol also got buffed as well. I totally forgot to mention that, but the bolter pistol feels so good. You can actually aim. You don't have to get good anymore. You can just pretty much aim and use that auto aim that you guys got on console, but on PC, you know, it's pretty solid now. I really like it, and it's a great thing that they finally buffed this gun, because it was the recoil was pretty crazy. Personally, I don't mind huge recoil guns. In fact, I prefer it, just like how I prefer the bolter in general, just blasting people away with a fully automatic, or even just the single fire when you aim down sight. I don't mind that at all, but I know some people do, and so they wanted to buff that and make it a little bit better. I want more big hitting weapons, so hopefully in the future we do get something like that, especially of that caliber, honestly. There's also quite a few people that have still been asking for solo mode, and they've been comparing it to Space Marines 2, where you can play it solo or just by yourself without players. I think you're still gonna have to connect online, but sometimes people don't want to play with other players, so it's weird that they haven't added it, because I know that they've already added it on Vermintide 2, so maybe one day they will. But at the moment, what's priority to Fat Shark is getting those damn good looking skins out there so they can earn that paycheck. I mean, come on, truthishly, I'm not gonna look breedable in front of that Nurgle by myself, am I right? So those are pretty much my thoughts on the new itemization for Darktide. Pretty huge update, a lot of players coming back. Definitely should have been the first iteration of the game, but Fat Shark are different priorities, and we all know that we can't 100% trust the darn overlords that control our gaming industry now, guys. Remember, the power comes from with you. Vote with your wallets and vote with your PC. Play the game if you don't want to, and play it and pay for it if you do want to support and get more, good games like this in the future. It's all up to you, though. I personally have been really enjoying it. I love the build variety. I love the horde clear system. Can't wait for Killing Floor 3. Cannot wait for other good games like For Honor to get released. For Honor 2, mind you, and all that good stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And be sure to check out the streams. I am streaming on YouTube and Twitch on Darktide, For Honor, and all that good stuff. So keep your notification bell on, and I appreciate all the support. Bye-bye. See you later.